They don't need a man who's got it made. Always looking for that renegade. I calls it like I sees it. A spade is a spade. A good man is a thing of yesterday. Yeah. They don't want them.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Sean.
How are you?
I'm doing great, actually.
Live from Tottenham.
Live from the porch in Tottenham again. Yeah.
That'll be the title of a book someday.
Yeah.
Live from the porch in Tottenham.
Hopefully.
You look good. I know we've talked a little already, but that's okay. I like your.
Yeah.
It's a cool shirt. It looks very summery.
It's kind of summery. It's very hot here. It's a linen-y, so it's light. I've been just trying to get outside. I wear a lot of blues, and I just decided I was, at Winners or whatever, and I saw this pink shirt. I'm like, that's for me. I'm gonna get that. So,
well, any of our American.
How you doing this morning?
I'm good.
Yeah.
I almost did it twice. I've been watching our previous podcasts, and I have a tendency to repeat it. It's like you say, "How are you?" I'm good. I'm good. I'm good.
Too good. Well, you're
good.
It's
like I'm Shawnee two-time. Like,
yeah.
So I'm trying to stop that.
Okay.
But yeah, you know what? I'm doing all right. Yeah, I enjoy podcast morning. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, me too.
I enjoy doing this podcast with you.
Yeah.
We've had some great feedback, some fans, so it's been nice,
It's fun.
I keep waiting for the advertisers and the sponsors, but not yet. You never know.
When the time is right.
So we're going to tackle a tough issue this morning, but an important issue. We're going to talk about depression.
We are.
Have you got a definition for us this morning?
I do. And it's funny, leading into this, we had a little chit chat before, and, both of us are kind of smiling and laughing, and yet we're going to talk about depression, something that we've both experienced in our lives. And
absolutely.
I mean, I honestly, how many are there any people who haven't had depression? I'm sure everybody
liars
at some time has had it. So I'll read the definition to start us off here. Depressive disorder, also known as depression, is a common mental disorder. It involves a depressed mood or loss of pleasure or interest in activities for long periods of time. Depression is different from regular mood changes and feelings about everyday life. And there's a little follow-up underneath. What is the definition of becoming depressed? And I wanted to read this too. If you have been experiencing some of the following signs and symptoms most of the day or nearly every day for at least 2 weeks, you may have depression. Persistent, sad, anxious, or empty mood. Feelings of hopelessness or pessimism, feelings of irritability, frustration, or restlessness.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm more familiar than I wish I was with a lot of those. That's a lot, man.
Yeah.
I think hopelessness is the one that hits me the hardest. That's usually my biggest problem. So
I think that the thing that I took away from it when reading it was it's because I just mentioned that most people have been depressed, but it's when you have that loss of pleasure for long periods of time. And then in the second definition, it said for at least 2 weeks. And so I find that that's really the crux of it. It's when you are really sitting in it for long periods of time that it just becomes this hamster wheel of negative thoughts, negative self-talk, And you know, that's when it really becomes a problem. If it's a day, 2 days,
it's a bad,
okay,
yeah.
not so bad.
2 weeks though doesn't even seem. 2 weeks seems like a cakewalk. I mean, I've been depressed for 2 years, 2 decades, like,
Yeah, yeah,
and it's hard to be depressed. It's being sad and depressed is exhausting. It's
it is.
exhausting. It
It
wears
is.
you out,
It is.
especially when I'm in sales and I have a family who depend on me, and I have customers and a
Yeah,
job that I have to be upbeat. So I spend my whole life depressed and then faking it.
yeah,
Well, that is really exhausting.
really exhausting. Yeah,
I heard years ago, fake it till you make it, fake it till you make it. Well, that's fine,
yeah,
except you eventually hope to make it.
exactly.
But when you don't, and it's literally been decades,
Yeah,
not exaggerating, but
no,
decades,
yeah.
it's exhausting. It's exhausting, and it leads to some pretty dark places.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
we're here
yeah,
to
I
discuss.
so I thought about a question actually related directly to depression that I wanted to ask you that I reflected on for myself. And the question is, when did you realize, like at what age or at what point in your life did you realize that you were depressed?
Um, what day did I meet you? Um, no, it was I'm 54.
I'll tell
I
you,
was
like,
I was in my mid-20s,
yeah, I
mid-20s.
mean, we talked about highs and lows in the previous episode, and I remember, you know, talking about meeting Shonda, and you had your Harley, and you're like, those obviously sounded like great times.
Mhm.
So the assumption is that you weren't stacking up days where you felt depressed. You may have had days, everybody I'm sure did, but
Yeah,
mid,
that was that was a good bad time in my life. It was
yeah,
good financially.
yeah,
Um, I was making good money, and you're right. I
yeah,
had Harley in a new truck, and we were going up to see AC/DC with you and Mike and Billy, and we were having some fun. But a lot of that, I was trying to buy my way into some happiness because of my mom's suicide. And my mom committed suicide, and I went to get some help right away. I
How
went,
old were you? Sorry, I don't know the timeline on that.
well, that was not as early as I just said, but it was 21 years ago. I'm 54, so 44, 33. I was 33.
33. That sounds about right. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I dealt with some sadness, but it was on some other things that we can talk about. It wasn't a real sadness.
yeah,
After my mom's suicide, I went to get some help, and
yeah,
I went to one session. I didn't like it.
yeah.
I didn't never went back. Should
Yeah,
have
of
gone back.
course.
Um, because I went to 21 years of just, so I was trying to buy my way into some happiness there for a while. And I was on a spending spree, like just anything to
Yeah,
distract myself. And I remember I would sit in my office and a certain song would come on, and Shonda come in there and just find me just in a ball. Like I mean,
yeah,
it really crushed me.
yeah,
And then I'm not gonna start bashing my dad again, but my dad did some stuff that was hard on me after,
yeah,
uh, including leaving me alone in the business. I remember people were like, "Oh, you must be happy now. You got the business. You got the big bucks." I
yeah,
didn't want the business. I wanted my partner. Like
yeah,
I
yeah,
depended on dad. It was too much for one guy. It was too much. And I wanted my dad to stay with me. And listen, he didn't slash couldn't, whatever.
yeah,
Uh, but it still leaves the fact that I was there holding the bag, and I did my best. I think I did a good job.
yeah,
But I that depression were because I didn't deal with it properly through
yeah,
counselors and doctors and
yeah,
and groups.
yeah,
I ended up turning to drugs, and I become a drug addict,
yeah,
and that worked for a while.
yeah,
Those drugs I was taking, they made me happy for a while. I say that all the time. Like I had a 14-year addiction. Well, the first 4 years, they weren't bad. Like
yeah,
I,
yeah,
I wasn't bad at all. But
yeah.
pretty soon the drugs became the problem and the solution. And
Of
that's
course.
a problem.
Yeah,
When
yeah. That's
the only thing they were solving was them, and I couldn't get off of them. So
yeah, and that's that's the hamster wheel of addiction that we come to know, right?
Right.
You mask the problem with the drugs or alcohol, or like you say, buying things,
Yes.
eating, any kind of addictive disorder is all a way of masking a problem that we have inside. It's all external. We think the external stuff is gonna fix us inside, but at the end of the day, all you're doing is delaying the work that you have to do on the inside, right?
Yes. And when you have a family, it's even worse because my family, at Christmas I was buying the kids lots of stuff and I was buying Shonda stuff but I wasn't present. I
Yeah,
wasn't here. Even when I was here, I just wasn't here. It was just like
yeah,
my son called me on this years later. Like, I would like, here, oh, here's a new video game. Oh, here's a new computer. Like,
yeah,
but I wasn't here because
yeah.
I was I was gone. All I could think about was my shit. I,
Yeah, and we've mentioned I mentioned it on a previous podcast. It's you're a human doing, not a human being. You're just doing, 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 doing. You're not necessarily being. You're not like being true to yourself. And just going back to your timeline there, you know, like again, I'm very chronological. We've talked about
Mm.
this. You talked. It's 21 years that you're basically saying when your depression started. 14 years of that you were in active addiction, and now 7 years of that you've been sober. So, a third of that period you've now been sober. So I would ask you then, like the follow up to that would be, have you felt less depressed in the last 7 years? Like, was your depression greater in those 14 years than it is in the 7 years, despite the fact that you were masking it with your addiction?
I
Uh,
would honestly, I would say, except for the last few years of my addiction, where I don't know if that was depression or just total just addiction. Like, I mean,
yeah,
those drugs, I was taking so many drugs, it was killing
yeah,
me. Like,
yeah,
so I can't really talk about that was the worst period of my life.
yeah,
But as far as being depressed, I'm worse now than I was then. It's been really bad the last few years. Um, I'm not doing anything right now. But I touched on gambling. I was doing that for a while as an addiction.
yeah,
I, I, I get to the point, I know how often I'm depressed that I don't want to say it because I know people are tired of hearing it. And
right,
I've caught myself in situations where someone will say, "Hey, how are you, Sean?" And
yeah.
instead of saying fine, because you're not that close to me, and why would I give you my problems? I tell them, well,
You talked about this.
actually, I'm not great.
Yeah,
And I tell them, and I can see their eyes like not glazing over. They're nice people. They're concerned, but they're like, "Whoa, I'm not ready or capable or wanting to deal with what you're telling me."
yeah,
And I also got in the habit of I never say I'm good. I say I'm okay. I say
yeah,
I'm all right. And
yeah,
I catch even on emails, people say, "How are you?" And I don't say it looking for attention.
yeah.
I say it because I can't say I'm good. I can't say it because I do not feel it. And I don't feel it so strongly that I can't even lie about it. I can't even fake it. Okay is the best I can do.
Yeah. My takeaway from that actually is that it's probably therapeutic for you to tell people about how you're doing,
It
because
is.
otherwise you're internalizing it. So at least by vocalizing it, it helps people understand where you're at, right?
Right.
Um,
And just before because I want to ask you a couple things.
yeah,
Part of depression is also I'm dealing with actual problems. I
sure.
I'm in the middle of an argument with the government over some back taxes.
Yeah,
I've got both my legs are bandaged up right now because I'm dealing with diabetic ulcers and problems that I'm going to go to the hospital twice a week for. And I'm taking 6 weeks worth of antibiotics,
yeah,
and I've got other health problems, some that I'm not going to talk about here, but I'm going for a scope on both ends, which I've never done before because they're seeing a problem, something else happening. I
uh-huh.
had 3 strokes a few years ago, and I've never recovered from those strokes. They called what I had a blind stroke. So some people have a stroke and half their face droops and they sound bad, which is, thank goodness that didn't happen to me.
Horrific.
But the problem with a blind stroke is people can't see it, so they think you're okay,
Yeah,
but I'm not. My mind never recovered. I don't see things the same.
yeah,
My drive isn't the same. My memory is shot. My
Yeah.
feelings, my emotions have been different since then.
Yeah.
So only reason I say all that is it's yes, I'm depressed, but there
Yeah.
are some things that are actually happening in my life
Yeah.
that that are depressing me. And I had a big fight with my oldest son a couple years ago. It knocked the shit out of me for about 6 to 8 months. I still haven't recovered from it. It wasn't really a fight. He was just
Yeah.
upset with me, and it really, I'm not saying he was wrong. It just really hurt me.
Yeah.
And I mean, it really killed me. My beautiful dog, she's in the midst of, I don't think she can be around much longer than a couple months, and that's been eating me alive because I love her so much. And you know what? Guess what, Chris? I don't have a monopoly on problems. We all have them.
No. No.
But I did learn a long time ago that pain is personal. So it doesn't matter if you come to me right now and you tell me 1,000 things that are 1,000 times worse than what's going on with me.
Yeah.
I don't feel bad for you, but it doesn't take away my problems. We have to deal with our own stuff.
We
It
do.
doesn't matter it doesn't even matter if the whole world's starving. My problems are still my problems,
Yeah. And I think, going back to when you came out of your addiction and then, got sober, oftentimes coming out of that, there's a lot of wreckage.
There is
There
a
debts,
lot.
there's damage done to relationships. Um, there, so we've likely both, we climbed into a deep hole, but what are we doing on a day-to-day basis to get out of that space? And you know I hear you saying that you're more depressed now than you were then, but I think if you ask yourself, are you really depressed right now in this moment? I would probably say that you're not, like, in
Not when
this
I'm
moment.
talking to you. Not when I'm doing this podcast. You caught me on that a few weeks ago. You said, "Are you sad right now?" And I said, "Not right now."
No, so
Right
saying that
now.
saying that you're more depressed right now isn't really true. You aren't more depressed right in this moment than you were 10 years ago or 14 or 20
Uh-huh.
years ago. You're not. You're
You're catching
actually
me on
better.
semantics. You're right. Yeah, you're right, though. Right.
This to me, this is the crux of it all. We all know that our thoughts create our realities.
Right.
They do. What your ego, what you say to yourself in your mind, oftentimes you wouldn't want to share that with anyone. You'd be like, I'm not telling people that. So, couple books I've mentioned in the past, The Power of Now with Eckhart Tolle. He talks about living in the now. He got to a point in his life, and I think I've been here. I still am to some degree. He got to a point in his life where he actually felt separated from his own self. He was looking at himself in the mirror, and he was thinking, who am I? Like, what have I become?
Done that.
He knew that there was something, his true self. There was his true self, and then there was his made up self. Like, he had created an identity for himself that he no longer understood. And when I read that, it reminded me of that movie with Jim Carrey, Me, Myself, and Irene. Like, he
Mhm.
became someone that he no longer understood.
Right.
Because I think, and this is the progression of life for a lot of people. Um, we're born in a state of near perfection. I mean, when you look at a baby, when you like, there is nothing, there's no hate. It's really like a baby. Is love. It's a glowing ball of love, and
Yeah.
then slowly things start to happen,
Yeah.
and you detach from that.
Yeah.
Like, could you, I
They
mean,
start
it's hard to
telling you
imagine, but
no,
can you
no.
imagine, yeah, having this feeling of like exuberance, love, complete happiness, total euphoria? Like, it it's almost unimaginable, but it is possible. It's all about how we think and talk to ourselves. Bruce Lee, I love the Bruce Lee quote. I don't think I've mentioned it, but he talks about never talking badly about yourself.
Well, you never catch me doing that.
Because it becomes ingrained. It becomes ingrained, and it
Well,
becomes
I
ingrained.
I just to catch on that point,
Sure.
'cause I know a buddy of yours said something about what I was doing, and I really appreciate it. I won't mention his name, but I really appreciated it, and I've been trying to do better. But I've thought for a long time, if I had a friend talk to me the way
Yeah.
I talk to me,
Yeah.
I'd punch him in the face. I
But
would
no, hey,
never let anybody else talk to me like that.
oh,
But
shout out to Dave Purdy. Thank you,
Dave
Dave Purdy.
Purdy, yeah, he caught me on it, man, and he got me thinking about it. I don't know if he knows how big an influence he's been on my life the last couple of weeks, but he has, because I've been thinking about that constantly.
And it's just a little thought, and it just changes your perception. Because you know, you just can get so deep into your head that it's just like you create a reality and you believe it to be true. You know, you talked about problems with the government and these kind of things. I mean, I think everyone's like, they have some tax stuff, they have this and they have that, and
Well, this is
it's not
big
the end
time.
of the world. Like there are solutions. Like there are way like that. You know, I don't. It's. I mean, I know it's not great. Of course, it's not great. But I mean, look, we do the gratitude challenges, the gratitudes these days, right? And isn't it just a wonderful thing every morning or evening or day to just reflect on a few things that we're grateful for,
It
right?
does work because I sometimes force myself to find something. It doesn't come easy, but at
I do
least I
too.
find something. At least I
Yeah,
find something. I think about it. Oh yeah, I am. But I'll tell you this, Chris, I never lie on those. If I say it, I mean it.
I
So
know I do
I
too.
find
I think
something.
it's hard. It's hard to lie about being grateful for something,
It is.
right?
It is.
There's an integrity in it because in order to say it, you have to feel it. You
You
can't
do.
fake it till you make it when it comes to gratitudes. Like
Absolutely.
if you said
Absolutely.
if you said you were grateful for something and I didn't really believe it, I probably would call you out on it.
No, you would for sure call me on it. That's one thing I
So
like about you is you don't let me slide on bullshit. And I like that about you. Sometimes I take it hard. Sometimes it bothers me for a day or
yeah,
two, but I do like
yeah.
the fact that you I don't mean you call me on it in a bad way, but you do call me on it. You don't just let it. And I like that about your my relationship right now anyway, is that we're not the same person. We don't have the exact same beliefs or thought processes or backgrounds or anything, but that's okay. We love each
Yeah.
other. We're friends. The important stuff rises to the top, right? So
We we have an honest and open relationship, which is the kind of relationships that are super important. Like they people you know, the people that you surround yourself with, they can change your life. They can lift you up. They can be honest with you. Like we're all, you can't get through this on your own. You can't. So you
well,
need,
I said this a couple weeks ago. We're a community. You just talked about babies. Babies can't survive on their own. Human beings can't survive on their own. We're a community.
yeah,
But I was thinking so much about what Dave said,
yeah,
because I used to say it, I used to feel this way about Mike James, and you're included in this part because I used to never understand. This is how badly I felt about myself.
yeah,
Me and Mike were really close for years and years, and it meant a
yeah,
lot to me. He still means a lot to me. I don't care what happens. He does. I love the man. But I couldn't believe that someone as cool as Mike, who was an athlete and successful and handsome and a good dad and all the stuff he was, I couldn't believe he would be friends with a guy like me.
right,
I just
yeah,
couldn't understand. And then he introduced me to you and BJ and Endos and well, and a lot of people. And I thought, I don't belong being friends with these people. I'm not at their level. Why would they like? Why would they hang out with me? Why would they care about me? Why would they think I was okay? That's how badly I feel about myself. I
yeah,
couldn't believe that. And it made me feel good because when I was Mike's buddy, I was kind of elevated a little bit, like,
yeah.
like, oh, well, that's Sean's with Mike. We got to be careful there, like he's with Mike and he's his buddy. And it made me feel really good. It made me
But
feel really good.
the reality of it is nobody was doing any charity work for you. You were there because you deserved to be there. You were there because you brought what you brought. You brought your honesty. You brought your integrity. You brought your loyalty that you've talked about, as being your number one thing. You brought those things, and people see that. It's the time that we're spending, outside of relationships, the time that we're spending on our own, where we're driving in our truck or whatever, where we start to like go into this space of I'm not good enough. I don't have money. I don't have, a great relationship or as good a relationship as I want to have with my son. I've made these mistakes. But again, we've talked about this on previous podcasts. A lot of that stuff is from your past, and some of it is from your future. But the reality of how we should try to think is really in the present moment. Like we really, again, and it's the philosophy of AA. I mean, I really think it's probably could be a life philosophy for so many people. All we really have is today. So what are we going to do today to feel good, to feel happy, to feel better about ourselves, to make some progress, to move forward? We talked about it on a couple weeks ago. Oh, on the sales episode, we talked about resting on your laurels. And look, if you're just resting on your laurels, you're not improving. You're in a state of complacency. So to me, it's the practices, the daily routines that need to change in order to change your mindset.
Yeah, and I've been failing in that. I've been failing, me and you. I mean, you have made, we talk about stuff and you do it. I talk about it and then I go right back to the old way. I don't do anything. And I don't know what's wrong with me, Chris. I don't know why I'm not doing more to improve it. I want to, in my heart,
Yeah.
I want to, but then I get off this podcast and off the texts, and then I'm just like, oh, fuck, how am I going to pay the government back? They're calling me right now. They're all over me. And,
Yeah.
What am I doing wrong? What's going wrong here? Oh, how am I going to get this done? And I get wrapped up in all the bullshit. And
Look,
uh,
I had some of that stuff after the last couple of years of my addiction were very difficult, and I spent money that I didn't have, and I was in trouble. But I had to it was amazing. I had to get on phone calls with some, credit card companies and different things. And I was just honest. I said, look, I've been an alcoholic for 2 years. I've spent money that I didn't have. And, it was amazing how people responded to that. I'm so sorry for you. Let's try to work something out. Let's try, like, there is compassion in everything. People
I,
I think the government, maybe sometimes people aren't,
right.
but you get to the right person.
I got the right person. The government does this thing where every 6 months they give you somebody new because they don't want you developing a relationship with somebody. So
Yeah.
the last lady I had was just like you said. She was empathetic. She was nice. We made a plan. I kept it to the T. Well,
Yeah.
my wife kept it to the T, let's be honest, but she kept it to the T. But now I got some new guy.
Yeah.
I can't even speak badly about him. I
Mm.
can't get up the nerve to even call him back.
Yeah.
I get so scared. I can't even find the courage to call him because I don't want to, but I have to, because if you ignore them, you're really going to be in trouble. So I have to find the courage, like probably today, I have to call this person. But
So we talked about this a bit yesterday in our gratitudes. Most depression is rooted in either fear, guilt, or shame.
that's the trifecta.
Right. So fear of what you think might be the outcome versus what, and that's about the future, because you're concerned of what might happen. I've said it before. I'm going to say it again. The Mark Twain quote: I've had a great many problems in my life, most of which never came true. Right. Because we get in our head, we get fearful. And I couldn't help but breaking out the big book this morning, because here's my big book. It's got some of my chips on it. So because when and the big book can apply to anyone. You don't have to be an alcoholic or an addict. There are certain steps that you go through that are very, very enlightening. We talked about enlightenment, getting lighter, not feeling heavy. Number 4 is huge. It's, you made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And in that, when you do it, you identify things that you've done wrong in your life, and then you look at the root or the cause of them. So, when I went through that, and it ties into it ties into resentments as well. So when I went through that, I had a lot of resentment towards my dad because I felt like he abandoned us when I was a kid. When I was young, he would go on these long trips to Europe. He would say, like, I was like 8, 9. He would say, "Okay, you're the man of the house now. Like, you take care of everything." And I'm like, I've mentioned this. I'm like 8 or 9. How am I going to be the man of the house? So I was very resentful. But when I looked at that, it was about fear, because I was scared, because I don't know how to be a man. I'm 9. What am I supposed to do with this?
I agree.
But
I used to do the same thing.
I realized that it was about fear of not knowing what to do, but it turned into a resentment. But when I looked at that, I thought I had to look at it and say to myself, my dad went off to work because he wanted to provide for our family. That is what his job required. So once I could let that go, I was like, well, why, I don't resent him for that anymore. It was just fear. It was fear.
Right.
And so when we slowly get rid of that fear, then we're able to handle things in a loving place. It was in the gratitude yesterday. The opposite of fear is love. Like if you come at it in a loving place, in a heartfelt place, you get on your phone call today, you try to be as loving and honest and open as you can without that fear. I think good things will happen. Things like, and this is the mindset. But and then again, going back, we made a list of all people we had harmed, and we became willing to make amends to them all. And that process is incredible. You talked just a moment ago about having an argument with your son. I think that there's a wonderful opportunity for you to make an amends, to go to him and say, listen, this has been bothering me in my heart. I've had a lot of sadness around this. I feel this and this. I just want to talk to you about it, and I want you to understand that this is where it came from for me, and I want to resolve this. I just want, you don't have to. You just apologize. You just, and when I did that in the steps, it was a wonderful process. I mean, I called people that I hadn't talked to in a while. I communicated with people that I went to university with 30 years ago, and they were so happy to hear from me, and they were like, I'm so proud of you. I so much appreciate that you're just even
Wow.
doing this. Like, the fact, like, most people would just never address it. They would just let it eat them up, and maybe that other person would have this resentment towards you. But I did it, and it was enlightening. I felt like I was dragging around these chains, and then I cut them off, and I could walk away. But it's never over. The thing is, I need to do this every day. I need to do this every day. And because a resentment will come up today, maybe not. Some fear will come up today. So then I ask myself, where is this fear coming from? Why is it here? And can I resolve it today before I go to bed and wake up with a clear conscience? We talked about the greatest thing that you could have would be peace of mind. This is the
way.
This is the way. As you know, I love that quote, and you do too.
This is the way.
From The Mandalorian. This is the way, and there is a way, but you have to put the practices into place. But it only has to be for today. You don't have to worry about whether you're going to do it tomorrow. You can forget about the fact that you didn't do it yesterday. If you do it today, you're making progress. That is like,
well, I have to. I've told you this before. Depression with me is I wake up, my eyes open.
Yeah.
I'm happy for a couple minutes, and then I go, oh, right.
Yeah.
This is my life. This is my and I just go, oh fuck, you know. And I start going through the motions. I take care of my dog, and I make my wife a coffee, and I try to smile and be nice, but in my mind, I'm just like, oh, you know. And then I have this other thing that hits me. I call it the Sunday night blues, and it's been happening for 10 years or more.
Yeah.
Sunday around 6 p.m. This wave comes over me, Chris, and I'm not lying. I'm not bullshitting.
Yeah.
I feel suicidal. It's a physical feeling. It just goes whoosh, and I'm like, oh, and
Because of,
it's like all hope, happiness is driven out of my body. And I think, yes, part of it's because tomorrow's Monday and I got to
yeah.
deal with my life again. Sunday, I don't have to so much,
Right.
but it's more than that. It's not just been like, oh God, it's just, another manic Monday, the Bangle song, it's not
Yeah.
that. It's more than that. And I don't know what the answer is. I got, drugs fucked up a lot of my brain, right? I mean, it did.
Sure.
I'm not the Sean Pauli I probably should be today, but
But
as
no,
you say,
yeah.
I am the Sean that I am.
No, yeah, no one is the person they were 10 years ago. No one is. So you can't go back and like relive that. You have to just press on. And I'm sure that's very real for a lot of people, the Sunday night blues, like, oh God, I have to go to work. But then I would only say, ask yourself, what can you do to change that? What can I do today to change how I feel tomorrow? And it's a pursuit of happiness. Like it's a pursuit of things that fulfill you. Um, in the definition, it describes the empty feeling, right? You and I both know that the podcast, it fills us up when we do it, right? The emptiness almost, it's like it's filling up, like we're adding fuel to our gas tank, right? But when your gas tank is on empty and you're riding around on your motorcycle and you're 200 miles from a gas station, you're going to be pretty fucking worried. You're like, oh man.
I'm scared.
Oh, it's about filling up that gas tank all the time, right?
And the
What
problem
am I
is,
going to?
if you don't, you drag other people down. Do you know how many times I've heard my beautiful wife say, well, obviously you're not happy with me. You're not happy with being married to me. I'm not enough for you. And what she doesn't understand, or maybe she does,
Yeah,
but she has never been the problem. She's
yeah,
been the one northern light that I lock onto. She is the one good part of my life, but I feel so bad that I have let her down so many times that it
yeah.
just piles on again.
So,
Like we're
yeah,
not in this venture alone, right? If I was just on my own, but I
we are.
worry about my wife and my kids and my friend. I worry about how I'm affecting other people, and then that wears down on me and it makes it worse again. Like it is a vicious cycle, man.
So, a couple takeaways from that. The reality is, we are in this on our own.
Oh no.
Yeah, we are. It's very like what I hear you saying, and look, I've done it for most of my adult life. We talked about our depression date. Mine's probably about 17 years ago. It was probably after the breakup of my first divorce. That's when I
I was going
started
to
to.
ask you, by the way.
Yeah, I know you were, but
Yeah, okay.
just circling back. But um,
I love the birds, by the way.
yeah, can you hear them? Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. I thought you were playing a bird soundtrack.
Oh, robins, cardinals. Yeah.
They're going to be on my grateful list today.
Awesome.
Your bird. Okay,
Um,
sorry, go ahead.
no, it's okay. It's all right. I think the reality is, and this is something that I've been processing for the last little bit, is that we have to love ourselves. If we don't love ourselves, then we cannot truly love another person. We can't. You can. This is a fake it till you make it. You can show up in a certain way, but certain people will require you to love yourself more than others. Um, and if you can't meet someone in a relationship maybe that you're in a way that fulfills them, it won't work. It won't. And there are a lot of books on codependency. um, there are a lot of codependent people who they again, this is the outside stimulation. It's almost an addictive quality. They're looking for someone else to provide the love that they need. But the reality is, until you love yourself, truly and wholly, it's going to be really hard to turn up and be as loving and supportive as people really need you to be. And I was thinking about it's a cartoon. I don't know if it's Bugs Bunny, but you know, when he's got like the little,
Yeah.
it might have been Tom and Jerry. He's got like the devils on his
Donald
shoulder.
Duck used to do it too. Yeah.
You know, there are always going to be, and this is the ego. They're always going to be the devil and the angel, right? So the question that I think you can ask yourself on a daily basis is, which one am I listening to more? Like, what I really want to do is starve the devil with all this negative talk. I really want to feed the angel and lift myself up, have this. And I've started doing it. We've talked about it in the past. I've sent you stuff. Positive self affirmation in the morning is huge for me. I pray and I meditate. Those are three things that I know that if I don't do them, my day is not going to go as well. I watched there, and I can't tell you. I mean, Instagram, for me, Instagram, I really, really enjoy Instagram because I can moderate what I see. There is so much great stuff, positive affirmation stuff. There's so much stuff for men that are struggling, for like so much. I can scroll, like if I'm scrolling for 20, 30 minutes, I am getting great information from that platform. And I watched one yesterday, and this she's a world famous psychologist therapist. I think her name is Sarah Hay. She says, get up in the morning. The first thing you do, I don't care what it is, you get out of bed, you walk straight to the mirror in your bathroom, and you tell yourself you love you 20 times. Or I love myself. I love myself. I love myself. Just repeat it. If you can do it at lunch, do it again. If you can do it in the evening before, I'm telling you, man, these things, these practices, it's fake it till you make it. Like, you will believe it. It is an incredible thing just to be able to change the way you think about yourself, um, in a small incremental way every day. I sent you the other one. I'm going on a little bit here, but I'm on a roll. The other one I sent you not that long ago was that happiness scale. Do you remember?
Yes. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
wild.
Like, yeah, it's 22 things. At the top, it's number one is joy, appreciation, empowerment, feeling empowered, freedom, and love. That's number one. Okay. At the very bottom of the scale, fear, grief, depression, despair, powerlessness.
Oh my gosh.
So
Unbelievable.
on the scale, like, and there's 22 other ones. Number two is passion. Number three is enthusiasm. Number four is positive expectation and belief. Five is optimism. Six is hopefulness. Seven is contentment. Eight is boredom. And then we start getting into these different colors: doubt, worry, blame, discouragement, anger. I'm telling you, like, if you want to do one thing today, print that thing off, tape it to your mirror in your bathroom or beside your bed and read it and decide which, like, just try to decide which one you want to achieve. If you can stay in 1 to 8 every day, your life is going to be good.
Well, I'm going to try those things you just said. I am going to try to do it. I'm going to try to, no, I'm going to do it. I always say I'm going to try it and I don't do it. By the way, we're still two old guys trying to do a podcast that don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, look, I always want to preface this. We don't, like, we're just offering advice. Like, I think
Absolutely. But
things are good, but
on a
there's just advice.
on a technical thing, next, if you ever have anything you're gonna you like that, I could put that on the screen. I could have shared that
Yeah.
and showed people. I
Yeah.
like to do kind of stuff like that, and that's bad on me, but we should do that in the
No,
future.
I think we should for sure.
But
'Cause it's
that list, I did look at that list and I was impressed, but like everything with me, I go look at it, I believe it, and then I forget about it and I move
Yeah.
on,
You just get back into your routine.
But the
Yeah.
opposite of what you just said, you know how many times I've looked in the mirror, especially when I was an addict, and just went like, "You piece of shit! Like you are such a
course,
piece of
of
shit."
course.
So you imagine how many times I've ingrained that in myself.
Well, but that's in the past.
Wow.
You know, that's in the past. So everyone who is in addiction, everyone who's in depression, um, you know, would of course say, I hate myself. And this is exactly what I said about Eckhart Tolle. He had separated himself. He was two completely separate people to the point where he hated himself and who he had become. But he recognized that that wasn't actually who he was. He actually then he basically gave up everything he had, and he went and he sat on a park bench every day all day long for 3 months, and then ended up he started to write a book. He's a world renowned speaker. You know, he's done TED Talks. He circles the earth talking about his Power of Now books. He was exactly where anyone who's experienced depression has been. So he's a shining example of how, yeah, you can get there, but you can get out of it. And it's
Right.
all about your ego and your mind and how you talk about yourself. And
If you ever catch yourself, I've caught myself, and might be there now, where you get comfortable in your depression. Like I'm
sure,
almost scared to feel
yeah,
better. Like
yeah,
that sounds ridiculous. And I get you
to feel
like
happy.
you like
You said
empathy,
that,
you like sympathy, and that is the worst thing in the world. I don't want to be that person, Chris. I'm admitting
no,
it because we're being honest, but I
yeah,
caught myself in these terrible things where when I had a thing bolted to my leg for 7 months
yeah,
with wires and bolts on my leg and terrible pain and everything else. But you know what? Everyone felt bad for me. Everyone held the door for me. I had to drive the electric cart around Costco, and but everyone was like, oh, and I got used to it.
yeah.
And when I took it off, it was like I was so happy it was off, but all of a sudden I was just, oh, no one gives a shit anymore.
Right. Yeah. And like it's
It's
amazing
weird.
how you can sit it. No, it's not weird at all. It's actually it's in I'm going to call you out on this. It's incredibly selfish, but the reality is
It
you
is.
like the attention because
I
it
did.
again, and this look this obviously I'm not a therapist, but I do work with a
Obvious.
therapist, and I'm talking about this kind of stuff with him because the reality of what happened with my dad especially was that I felt abandoned. I felt abandoned by him, and I also felt like he didn't he didn't praise me enough. He wasn't an emotional man. He wasn't a loving man. I could count on one hand how many times I hugged him when I was young. Like I don't remember it. Maybe it's more, but so when we have that abandonment feeling, we're looking for attention that we didn't get when we were a kid. Like we are as adults, and
Mm.
it's just like it's a strange place because you realize that you're looking for that attention, and but it is really selfish, like because
Oh,
it
it's
is. I
selfish.
mean, selfishness isn't.
I know it is.
It's about ego. It's about what you think you need. So
It's hard when you catch yourself doing something that you don't want to be doing, but I'm being honest. I'm just being honest. I know it's shitty, but I'm telling you the truth. And it's like, when I was in the hospital with my strokes and when I was in detox,
yeah,
those were terrible places. But
yeah,
part of it, I was happy because
yeah,
I didn't have to worry about anything. All of a
absolutely,
sudden, I've been a father since I was a kid.
yeah,
And I've been worried about my family. I love my family so much, and
yeah,
I've been worried about them. I've always thought I was going to fail them.
yeah,
And it was like all of a sudden, I'm in a hospital. I can't do anything. Like I've had a stroke, and the
mhm,
nurses are taking care of me, and I'm not feeling guilty. I'm not taking care of things. I can't. I literally can't. And it was like I could relax for a minute. Like I could
yeah,
just relax.
yeah,
Now I was on the phone telling people, I was still trying to do business like an asshole, but that's who I am. I'm just so, I mean, I had a
yeah.
thing bolted to my leg. I didn't even want to tell people because I thought I'd be a failure. Oh my God, man.
I know, and I
Party's
felt the
gonna
same.
kill me.
I felt the same way in my recovery because it became just a singular focus. I didn't have to think about other things. Um, I just was like, I'm just focusing on my sobriety, and that was enlightening because we are thinking and focusing on a lot of different things every day, but reflecting on that, I realized that if I kind of drill down and I do in the moment, in each moment, try to like just have a singular focus. My singular focus right now is talking to you. When I get off the phone or when I get off the podcast, my singular focus will be to drive to work. My singular focus will be to do the work. And it's in those moments where you're just sort of you're really simplifying things. Um, I went for a bike ride this morning. I just singularly focused on the bike ride and I focused a little, I focused on the birds and there were rabbits running, but I wasn't in my head about worrying about what am I doing later today? What am I doing tomorrow? So,
Right.
again, there is a relief in sort of just, man, I'm gonna hammer it home again, just being in the now and living in today. And I'm not saying you can't, you have, I mean, you have to plan for the future, of course you do, but um,
But not at the expense of today.
no, no, because I mean, you like, you and I, whatever. I mean, this is real. We could die in our sleep tonight. Like, how do I want to make sure that I'm showing up in a loving way for myself today, and a loving way to everyone around me, to the best of my ability. You know,
I don't
it's a,
know. I don't know. I mean, you know, I haven't slept in my bed for 2 years.
yeah,
I
I know.
sleep in a recliner,
I
and
know you
it was
have.
physical for a while when I had that thing on my leg.
Yeah.
I don't, I've talked to therapists and they go, why don't you go back to bed? And I don't know why, Chris. I know it sounds like
Is
idiotic.
your mattress shitty or something?
No, it's not shitty. It's a beautiful Kingsdown mattress. It's one of the best. And I've started calling my recliner room my room and that my wife's room. And like my bed is there and she sleeps on her side and I look over and like my side hasn't been touched in 2 years. And it's like,
What's the root of that? Let me ask you that. Why? Why are you choosing that?
I don't know. I feel like I'm punishing myself, like I don't deserve to go to bed or something, you know? Like I don't know what it is. I don't know because I'll say to my wife every night, she kind of
Yeah.
just smiles at me and gives me a kiss. She's not mad about it anymore. I say, I really am gonna try to come to bed tonight. I
Yeah.
am, I promise. I'm just gonna watch TV for one night. And she goes, yeah, okay. Like
Yeah.
she knows I'm not coming, but
Would you be happier if you did?
oh, I think so. Are you kidding? I love laying next to my wife. Now, my
But you
wife has gone through a part in her life where she gets hot. She doesn't really want me touching her anymore. That's a physical thing.
get it,
But
sure.
I do miss sleeping next to my wife. I love my wife. I mean, but I think there's something there too that I
You're feeling shame, you're
no,
feeling
I don't
guilt.
know. I think it's shame. I think it's a lot of things. I think
But
it's a lot of things.
you're asleep. So at least when you're asleep, you don't have to worry about your shame and guilt and all that shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why
I
don't you just commit to doing it tonight? Just commit.
well, I can promise one night. I can do one night.
I'm gonna call you on it. I'm gonna call you in the middle of the night, FaceTime you, and see if you're laying in your bed.
Oh, you know what? I'm going to put a live camera in my room for the whole night, but I'm not going to tell my wife.
Okay.
Yeah, it's funny. I texted you yesterday, and that wasn't something I'd made up. But my God, when I was talking about depression, I heard someone talking about it. Somebody famous, I forget who, and they said it was like being the worst homesick you've ever felt, but you're still at home. And
Yeah.
my God, that described depression to me
Oh,
perfectly.
I've had that. I've had that too. I had that at the tail end of my second marriage. I literally, when my workday was over, I didn't want to go home.
Right,
And the
right,
reason ultimately that I realized that I didn't want to go home is I just wasn't showing up the way I needed to show up.
right,
I was too wrapped up in myself. And I, I did. I liked who I was while I was at work, but as soon as I had to go home, I didn't like that. I did not like that. And that's a terrible place to be, man. That's really a lot. There's a lot of sadness and there's a lot of pain in that. And, you know, again, I think that now that I've put in these certain practices and I hear you saying them too, I'm able to identify my state of depression. I'm able to identify my sadness and I'm able to get rid of it much quicker.
right.
Whereas there were certainly times, you know, I mean, when my after my dad passed away, that whole week of the Masters, like everybody in my family was like, "Don't talk to Chris." I was just sad. I was drinking. I was in the den watching them. I like just don't even talk to Chris. And that's so terrible. Like people like avoiding me.
Yeah,
And I realized that when I went through my resentments and my moral inventory, I realized that I had broken a lot of relationships with people that who love me to this day, but
right.
who I'm not very close with because I just wasn't showing up very well. You know, I was that guy. Oh, he drank too much. He did this. He did that.
But it's the not showing up. Man, I like the way you said that, not showing up.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to dwell on my friend Mike or my boss Mike, whatever you want to call him, but
Yeah.
Listen, Mike's not perfect by any means, but I can't blame him for the fact that we're not close anymore because I stopped showing up. And I don't mean doing my work.
Yeah,
But you
I
know
know.
what? But fear led to that. I
Yes.
was so scared that
Yeah.
if I was talking to him that I was letting him down. I was so scared I was letting him down that I started avoiding him. And then it just we grew apart. So I can't blame him for that. I can still mourn it though. I mourn it like I mourn like miss. Like I feel bad. And listen, I'm not saying he I don't mean he won't talk to me. He's not my friend, but we were really close. And
Yeah. Look, I,
oh,
I'm the same with Mike. We're not that, we're not very close. I know that he loves me. I know that he cares about me, and I feel the same. But um, you know, and I remember you telling me about how you used to talk every day,
mm,
and I remember how that slowly kind of left your life. And again, I hope you take this in the best possible way. I feel like it probably became a bit of an unhealthy relationship for him
it was. It
because
was.
you were bringing a lot of your pain.
I
And
was I was in a mess.
it's
And
one, yeah, it's one thing to ask maybe your partner, like your
wife.
significant other, to
Yeah.
do that, your wife. But it's another thing to ask a friend, and it's a lot. And some people, like, they will separate themselves from that, and that's a natural protective mechanism.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. He had to. He had to.
and
He had to get rid of. He had to get away from me. I understand. It
I
still
think,
hurt me though.
of course it did. But I think that there's plenty of room for you to rebuild that and to get back to that and
Oh,
find a mutual place where you both are happy to do it. You're accepting, but it really does. Um, it requires work from you, um, and it requires work from everyone. If there is an imbalance in a relationship, it's, again, I can go back to the scale. If Mike's at number one and you're at number 22, how are you going to hang out?
we're
Like,
not. We're
it's
not.
it's like pretending that, I played t-ball really well when I was 8, so I'm going to join the major leagues. This is like,
It's not gonna
you're
stop. It's not
you're
gonna.
out of your mind. Like, you.
Well,
So
we were at the end
when
of,
you,
like, for example, I was at his condo, his beautiful $1 million condo downtown,
yeah,
and I was there. I was there with you. We went up to breakfast, the three of us, one day. Uh,
I remember.
One day I was there with him, and he was on the phone. They were arguing over their boathouses with his new rich neighbor, and I was happy to be there. I went over on
Yeah,
the deck, and I was this close from jumping off of it.
yeah,
That's how far apart we were.
yeah,
Like he didn't know that, but I mean, Chris, like I called my cousin while I was there. Mike doesn't know this, but
yeah.
because I was going to jump off Mike's balcony, like I
Thank
was,
you for admitting that,
fuck,
Sean. That's a
fuck.
lot to admit, a
It
lot.
was,
And
and I'm not just saying that like, oh, I might have done it. Like I was going to do it, and I called my cousin crying. Mike was on the phone, and he had talked me down.
that's yeah, that's a state of real hopelessness and despair, and that's at the
It
bottom of the
was,
scale, man. I
it
it's
was. That's where I
and
was.
look, you know, there's a lot of talk, if you want to drill into it. A lot of people talk about vibration. We all have a vibration about us, whether it comes from our heart or our soul or whatever you want to talk about. But when you're at the top of that scale, people want to be around you. You are vibrating at a high, like, beautiful place. But when you're at the 22, man, you are not. Like, people are like, whoa, I'm just gonna stay away from that.
I've seen it.
Um,
I remember when I was at the top and I was winning salesman of the year and I was, people would call Mike and say, well, Sean's the best rep down here. And, I was grooving and moving and I
yeah,
loved it. But as I fell into depression and a lot of it was from not dealing with my mom's suicide and letting that trauma just beat me down and beat me down and beat me down. And then, having health problems and addiction and all that. Nobody wanted to be around me anymore. I was toxic. I
yeah,
can't blame
yeah,
those people. I remember when Mike called me on it. I'll never forget it. He called me and I said something about like it was a bad moment. I'm not going to discuss it, but I said, yeah, but man, you're my best friend. And he goes, man, if this is a friendship, you are not being a very good friend. He said,
right,
I started crying. It crushed me, but he
of
wasn't
course,
wrong. He
of
wasn't
course,
wrong. But
yeah, and
but I
yeah,
to hear those words,
yeah. That's tough.
fuck.
That's
It was
That
hard.
takes a lot. That takes a lot of self-reflection. But I think that the reality of it is, you beat yourself up over it because you think it's your fault. But I think a lot of it really isn't. I think a lot of it is your experiences. I think we're talking about depression. I think anyone whose mother committed suicide and who found her and who hasn't dealt with that is going to be living in a significantly depressed state. I mean, I can't tell you what to do, but I could honestly tell you that therapy should almost become a number one priority for you. And I know it's not real quite in the cards right now or whatever, but man, oh man, until you start addressing some of that stuff, you're going to be dragging that thing around like a chain. I know that I'm talking about coming to see you. I think going through the steps is an important process too. I think getting rid of your moral inventory, making some amends. These are really important stuff, because that is, no one can fault you for being depressed as a result of having that experience in your life, man. I can't even imagine. I can't, Sean.
No,
And
it's
I like, honestly, I respect you and love you so much, because that is a significant experience that no one can diminish. So
no,
yeah, dude,
no.
you're
Thank
you're
you for
doing,
saying that.
honestly, you're doing amazing, considering that. I really like.
Well, that's nice of you to say. The problem is you don't deal with it. You know, some people look at me and say, "Sean, it was 21 years ago." You know how many times, nights, it's like it was yesterday. Like
Might
it
as well have been. It might
never
as well have been.
stops. I besides your kids committing suicide, I can't think of a worse thing than your mother.
There's
Like,
nothing there.
and
No,
then you find out truths, and and then there's guilt, and it's just, and then you ruin your kids' relationships with yourself and your wife because you're just dealing with this shit. But you know what? That's a
yeah,
good, that's probably a good place to stop, and it's also a good segue
it
because
is. It
next
is.
week's our 10th podcast, which I'm very proud of.
Thank
I
you.
read I read that like 80 or 90% of podcasts never make it to 10, so we're gonna do it. And
Yeah,
next week's gonna be a tough one. We're talking about suicide and death.
we
Um,
are.
and I promise to anybody listening, we're not going to be this depressing every week. We are going to find some happier topics. But I think you and I always try to bring the positivity out of the negative topics too. Um, I was going to call this episode depression. I'm starting to feel like we should call it Mike, but we talked a little bit more about Mike than I meant to. I apologize. I didn't mean to do that, but
Um,
anyway,
but we were talking about our own experiences, and you were
yeah,
talking about healthy relationships, and that's it's wonderful that you're addressing that you're talking about things that are important to you. I know that it's a little, of course it's heavy, but it's real. It's real, and
it
it's
is.
real for a lot of people. I hope that we offered a little bit of insight as to how you can improve, the feeling of sadness, hopelessness, whatever, every day. That there are some little things that you can do. I'm incredibly grateful for being here with you, man.
Me too.
Uh,
I was going to say, if I could just talk to you 24 hours a day on this podcast, that'd be fine, man. I'd be fine.
and well, 16 hours and then 8 hours sleep in your bed.
Oh no. I think it'd be easier to talk to you for 16 hours and get 8 hours in that bed. But anyway.
Yeah, we might get a
So,
little burnt out, but yeah.
I am very much looking forward to our together podcast we're going to do when you get here. I'm very excited about that. And hopefully, yeah, it'll be a special event. I don't know. Maybe we'll have some cake or something. Who knows?
That'd be great. That'd be great.
All right. Well, listen, I could keep talking as usual, but time does get away and we both have jobs to do and lives to live. But
Yeah.
you know what? We've said this on other podcasts. There can be a part two to this one. I found everyone we've done, I feel like there should be a part two. But you know what? That's good because there's only so many subjects, but I do want to circle back to some of these ones we've done. So this will be one of them, I think.
Well, we could maybe in a month or so we could do a review of the practices that we're doing
Yeah.
to improve our depressed state.
And if
But
I've done nothing, everyone will say he is full of shit. He really is full of shit. But
I'm happy to say that at least in this moment, and I'm not depressed, and I feel very grateful for our podcast. I feel grateful to have you as my best friend, and I'm
me too, man.
very happy
You're my best
be here
friend
to
too,
talk about this. Yeah.
it does cheer me up. I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad you're doing okay. I was a little worried about you this week. I know you were not feeling the best all week, but I'm glad you're
No,
feeling
I
good
got
now.
in my head. I got in my head. I was beating myself up a bit, but I'm okay with who I am today. So I'm gonna keep that thought in mind.
All right. Well,
All right, brother.
have a good day.
Love you, man.
I love you
You
too.
too.
One of these weeks I'll hit that mark right, and I'll remember to have the volume up, and I'll do everything. One of these weeks I won't mess up the music. We'll see.
Don't beat yourself up.
They don't need a man who's got it made. Always looking for that renegade.
Okay.
I calls it like I
All right.
sees it.
You,
A spade is a
have a good
spade. A good man is a thing of yesterday.